How to save Disney Star Wars. First and foremost, you of course must, in the present, take steps to complete and properly conclude the Skywalker saga with a fully planned out trilogy. But more importantly, you must pay attention to the future, because your goals for the future should help guide you to accepting the inevitable conclusion to the saga. The Force must be brought to balance. The Jedi and the Sith must end, and the galaxy must experience an age of peace and healing. 1, 2, maybe even 3,000 years must pass relatively uneventfully as far as things worth making movies about is concerned. But with slow, gradual, balanced change, growth and harmony, allowing for you to come back 1, 2, or 3,000 years later to the Star Wars galaxy, to a new federation that has stood for over 1,000 years, with increased intergalactic trade and harmony and peace, and you can begin your own Disney Star Wars saga. 9 to 12 episodes comprised of trilogies, skipping a generation ahead between each trilogy, and skipping usually at least a couple of years between films in a trilogy, sometimes as many as 5 years. Maybe even 10 if you got one of those kid introduction Anakin and then skip to him as an almost all the way grown man. That sort of thing. It can vary there. But importantly, it's got to be going a generation between trilogies. It doesn't necessarily have to follow a single family, nor a Skywalker, as this is meant to be Disney's saga. Not Lucas's Skywalker saga, but the new Disney Star Wars saga. And one of the many benefits of jumping that far into the future is allowing for an easy integration of synthetic biological components into droids, giving them some actual connection to life and to the Force, allowing you to introduce Force-wielding droids for the first time in your own Disney saga, where the world has begun to change. Introduce a new threat, build your own lore, have your characters possibly respect or someone be aware of some of the history of the Journal of the Skywalkers, that time long ago when the galaxy was changed forever, because that's what the Skywalker saga must do upon conclusion. It must change the galaxy in such a way that 2, 3, 1,000 years from now, people are still keeping their calendar by its date. And the death of an emperor who didn't actually die on a death machine that was neither the first nor the last of its kind is not the type of event that holds up a calendar for a galaxy for thousands of years. You need something that was always hiding there. The inevitable conclusion of the Skywalker saga. And while the route that Disney takes, or any other fans out there who want to try and fix the Disney's saga, the Disney Skywalker saga? Any other fans out there who want to help me fix that? You may get there in your own ways, with your own characters and your own plot threads. But as long as we show Disney the way to that inevitable conclusion, and they see it, and they accept that it is the inevitable conclusion to the Skywalker saga, and they do it, even if they do it semi-poorly in their own way, it's going to be better than the current Disney trilogy. And as long as it's better than that, it might be good enough to stick the landing. And sticking the landing, ending on a high note, is one of the things that helped the prequel trilogy continue to resonate. Revenge of the Sith was a very nice high note, sticking the landing trilogy ending that found love in the hearts of millions of fans who continue to be lifelong fans. And that's how you build a franchise as big as Star Wars. Not just with like of the masses, but love of many. And you have to earn that love. You can't just buy it. You have to do a story justice. And once the inevitable conclusion of the Skywalker saga has been revealed, it is the conclusion that must be obtained in order to unite the fans and end the Skywalker saga, allowing new life to be breathed from Disney into their version of a modern Star Wars down the road. Because we can still expand upon the existing Lucasfilm Star Wars saga, the Skywalker saga, and all of its associated shows like Mandalorian and Clone Wars, comics and novels, all of that filler that fills in between the bones, that sinew, that tissue, that depth that's given onto this foundation. Then there will still be life in it. It will still be remembered. But it needs to be whole. It needs to be finished. And there is plenty of love for filling out pieces of the story people don't know and exploring such an amazing world with unique stories set in it that don't affect the main story. The Mandalorian does that well so far. And the fact is, as long as you can continue exploring this giant fucking galaxy, you can leave the Skywalker saga and its participants completed and finished. The era of Star Wars set. Like with the Clone Wars, when we looked at it from the future, we know it ends. Even the Old Republic, those games were popular despite us knowing the ending, that the Republic would stand and the Jedi would be its guardians and the Sith would fall. We all knew that going in, but the story was still worth telling. But since that story has been told so well and so thoroughly by fans, Disney, you're not ready for it. Maybe you will be in the future. Maybe you can do the Old Republic justice one day. But what we want right now is not the Old Republic. And what we want right now sure as hell isn't the High Republic. What we want right now is an end to the Skywalker era, and a jump 1, 2, 3,000 years into the future of Star Wars. That's something Disney can do with Star Wars that they can't do with Marvel. Marvel can't really jump 1,000 years into the future when its present is so connected with ours. As divergent as it has become, it was grounded in us. In jumping 1,000 years into the future, they can't create a saga there. Nobody's going to tune in for Infinity War Part 2 guesses about the year 3000. But they will continue to tune into Marvel for the ongoing story, and perhaps they will get a new saga going with these new phases. That's on them. But they set a fantastic precedent, and it's time to step up to the plate, Disney, conclude the Skywalker saga, jump to the future, something Marvel can't do, and give the fans a Disney Star Wars saga. A new foundation of trilogies for a new age of Star Wars set in the future. Not a High Republic set 200 years in the past when people we know are still alive. We don't want that. We don't want you to change our views on characters who already have our love to make money. It's one thing when the original creator or a true spiritual successor explores something different about a character to change our views on them in a thoughtful way. But when it's done to pervert our expectations, it's not just disrespectful, it's damaging to the very thing you're trying to build. You have to show love to earn our love. And when you do not show love to the characters, and that doesn't mean not hurting them, by the way. Oh no. They must suffer. That is how we learn to love them. Not by them giving up. Not by them hating their own past. The past that we love. Not by running from who they are. Sometimes, though, we can love a character who has chosen to redefine who they are. The problem is when you switch them back to who they are for the end of the movie and then kill them off, you're saying they spent a lifetime just giving up. And there's some characters we won't accept that of. We also won't accept a queen going mad at the drop of a coin and deciding to burn a whole city to the ground full of innocent people for no legitimate reason other than, well, she's eventually going to go crazy, right? And you really can't finish a saga or a story with a note like that. When you did that in Game of Thrones, when you did that in the current Disney trilogy, when you do that in Lost, when you mess up the ending so badly, people stop wanting to ever even start the story again. Even tragic and painful stories, ones that hit an audience emotionally hard, one where characters they love suffer through pain and failure in ways that make sense for them, in ways in which we can believe we're still watching the same person who we fell in love with and not some doppelganger, some impersonator doing evil things in their stead. Then we can find love. But when And with that love, we can find a desire to rewatch over and over again. Even the Red Wedding. Some people must look away, but others kept rewatching it in anticipation of the coming seasons because it resonated with us, even though it was tragic. Even though characters we love suffered. The reasons they suffered and the ways they suffered made sense. Even Oberon's death, as brutal as it was, as painful as it was for me to watch, as I grew to love that character very quickly, I still love that character, despite his death. He got cocky and overconfident, and it cost him. And that's a life lesson, too. When characters suffer and fail because of who they are and their own flaws that they have to overcome, we resonate with them. When they gain new flaws between trilogies that they had shown themselves to be the exact opposite of before, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't resonate. The person who's known for never giving up now gave up? Seriously? There's a better way. I will show you that better way, Disney. And I'm sure many other fans will rise to the challenge and show you themselves how to handle a wise old mentor who has given up on the Jedi. Because you can do that without having them give up on helping people or on being a hero or on being who they are. It's one thing for a wise old hermit who's given up on the Jedi to start a new path. It's another thing to have them give up. Even if that new path is a path into darkness, they're still actively going somewhere. That's what makes protagonists and antagonists and heroes and characters worth telling stories about. When you take a character who is beloved in their original story and make them a failure who gave up, you're damaging their entire thread in the overall weave of the story. You're weakening the foundation of your whole cinematic universe. And there are legitimately two ways to build a cinematic universe, which I may go over at some point in the future. But for a real cinematic universe, you got two options. Out in and in out. Either way, you start with the foundation. Marvel started with the foundations on the outside, building their individual character films on Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, and the Hulk, and then brought them all together in a central film, joining them on the inside. Those solid foundations help them build a magnificent cinematic universe on top of that. Star Wars, on the other hand, created a saga of films starting to build in the center. And then from that center, they built outward. Not only up with the other films in the saga, but on top of that skeleton, they branched out into the expanded universe, or legends. And even now, with Disney's series like Clone Wars and Rebels and the Darth Vader comics and the new Thrawn trilogy, they are rebuilding parts of that outside. But they have added to the foundation and damaged it. And as long as that foundation is not repaired, anything they build will fall apart. But if they just knock down what they've built and start over again, after doing that, to the expanded universe and legends, that won't save any future for Disney. It may save old Star Wars, and those of us who love the expanded universe will be able to much more easily accept that even in Disney canon, the expanded universe is just as real as their Disney trilogy. But what about the people who've grown up with the Disney trilogy? What about the people who have fallen in love with bits and pieces of it? They'll go through the same pain that we had to go through when Disney ripped down everything but the foundation and destroyed the expanded universe and started building all over again. Do we want them to go through that pain? Or do we want to use our love of Star Wars and their love of Star Wars and find a way to fix that foundation and complete the Skywalker saga? Setting up a future to come back to with a clean slate, new threats, new challenges, new heroes, new types of Force users, maybe even some new races, and so many new possibilities that the only limit will be our imagination. And yes, it is hard. It is difficult. It is quite a challenge to fix with love what has been broken. But we need to rise to the occasion as fans. We need to salvage the good, fix what we can, lay groundwork, and recontextualize some of the past to try and fix characters that they screwed up. And thankfully, Star Wars is truly a unique franchise in that it's already got a built-in opportunity to give certain characters a second chance. And I cannot imagine a Skywalker saga concluding without the presence of both Luke and Anakin Skywalker as Force ghosts. Before it's too late to have Luke there. It's already too late to have Leia again. Not our Leia. And as difficult as that is, if we destroy, delete, and retcon her last performance, I think that makes us part of the problem. Doesn't it? Love is the solution, not hate. We only hate what Disney has done to Star Wars so much because we love Star Wars. It's too late to rewrite their trilogy and fix it. It's done. It's out there. It is the loudest voice in common culture, getting hundreds of millions of people to see a new re-edited version of it, or a new imagining of episodes 7, 8, and 9, is not going to succeed. General audiences are not in for that sort of undoery. There's a reason Marvel was smart enough not to undo the snap, but to bring everyone back and keep the forward momentum of the timeline. That is something general audiences can understand and continue to follow, because the story is only moving forward. And while you don't always need to do that, you can start with 4, 5, 6, and then go back to 1, 2, 3. You can't erase 1, 2, 3 and then do 1, 2, 3 again. But you can do 10, 11, and 12. You can plan out a trilogy to conclude the saga, to fix as much of what's been broken as possible, and to give the Skywalker saga the inevitable conclusion that has been just hiding there in plain sight the whole time. Then you get to usher in a new era of peace and prosperity, a much less eventful era, and jump forward to the future. That is how you become the future of Star Wars, not in the past with the High Republic. I plan on trying to use love to save a lot of stories and ideas and find ways for them to continue breathing new life on this channel. But if I could save only one franchise, if I could save only one story, it would be Star Wars. It would be by concluding the Skywalker saga with episodes 10, 11, and 12, with a complete trilogy that restores the faith and love of the fans by giving us a great ending. The conclusion Star Wars needs for the Skywalker saga. We must bring balance to the Force. A lasting balance. We must do it with heroes and villains who we can love and hate. And we must do it while trying to fix broken parts of the very nature of the reality of the Star Wars universe. There are broken things we need to fix. We watched it come tumbling down. Here on YouTube, a lot of people raged and ranted and tore apart its many, many failures and failings. The disrespect the laziness, the damage that was done turned our love to anger and even hatred. But our love turned that back into laughter instead of suffering. We found catharsis. We found healing and insight. Failure is a great teacher, and Disney's many failures have taught us a lot about what the Skywalker saga needs, and what a saga does also need, in general, to end properly. The Infinity Saga ended with a beautifully planned out 5.5 hours of movie, split into Infinity War and Endgame. They stuck the landing, and they earned the love of millions. Not just the like, but the love of millions, like Star Wars did back in the day. Star Wars can do that again. It can be just as big, bold, and beloved of a franchise as the MCU, as it itself used to be, as Disney ever was, when handled properly, because it is a hero's journey, and it needs to explore more heroes' journeys. It's hard to even think about keeping everything that happened in the Disney trilogy as canon for some people. It's painful. Some of the damage they've done will forever change how certain characters are looked at. Some of that can be recontextualized, and some of it can be repaired, but sadly, some of it can't. Akbar's tragic ending, for example, is not something I can fix or change. But Star Wars is a war story, after all. And sometimes deaths are tragic, sudden, abrupt, painful. Sometimes smugglers go back to their old ways, and we don't like it, but there's really not much we can do about it. We can give Force Ghosts a second chance. We can give the Skywalker family a last chance. And we can redefine what a Skywalker is, all at the same time. We don't need to replace a Skywalker with a Palpatine. Although, it may not be a bad idea to go ahead and keep Rey as a Skywalker. As long as we take the time to recontextualize what that means now, and potentially define what that will mean for the future of Star Wars. We shall see. That's enough ranting for me today.